Frank the pilot. How do you become an airline pilot? How do you get that airline pilot interview? There are various ways to becoming a pilot, and I did it my way, and this was the way that I did it. I flight instructed at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. I taught all phases of pilot licenses, including ATP applicants. I towed banners. I flew night cargo, and I flew passengers on the turboprop airplane for 100 days. I was on a mission to get a major airline pilot job. I didn't know much about the airline industry. I just knew I wanted a pilot job at a major airline. In January of 1987, I purchased a pilot hiring service from Future Aviation Professionals of America, FAPA. FAPA published important pilot data on airlines, and they had a computer database for storing all your flight time. FAPA also started conducting pilot hiring seminars in conjunction with airline companies across the USA. The second such seminar was in March of 1987 in Atlanta, and I attended this seminar. But unlike the majority of the other pilot seekers who attended, I did my homework and was well prepared. Virtually all the other pilot seekers showed up, picked up a job application, dropped off their resume with the representative at the various airlines. I did some homework up front. I obtained the various job applications and learned the names of the individuals who would represent the airlines that interested me beforehand. So at the seminar, I had a complete job application and a personalized cover letter for each company. I also had a resume, photocopies of my pilot license, my FAA medical, and copies of 3 letters of references, all arranged neatly in a large brown envelope. Professionally dressed in a gray suit, I approached each airline representative. I introduced myself and personally hand-delivered a complete pilot application package. As the representatives flew back to the headquarters, they had my complete application package, the only package they had received at the seminar with photocopies of all the necessary documents. This was my edge I created. In June of 1989, shortly after, Flying Tiger Airline, a major airline, invited me to a job interview in Los Angeles, California. The interview process consisted of 5 parts. The first part was with Beth, an employee specialist with a psychology degree. She interviewed me on a one-on-one basis for about an hour. Beth asked me why I took 54 college credit hours in 1 year. That was in 1984. I took 54 college credit hours at Embry-Riddle. At that time in my life, I had limited knowledge and very little experience on interviews. Therefore, I purchased and read Sweaty Palms, The Neglected Art of Being Interviewed by H.B. Medley. With the knowledge from that book, like a politician, I turned the question around and answered it to my advantage. I said to Beth, I observed that the airline industry was rebounding and there would be a need for more pilots. And I wanted to get a competitive advantage amongst my peers. So I wanted to increase my qualifications at a faster rate. Then in part 2, I was interviewed by a 3-pilot board for around an hour and a half. Captain John asked me, have you ever had an emergency? You can expect that question on every airline pilot interview. The Cessna 402 nose gear failure landing was the best emergency story I can think of, and I told that story. That was in my emergency pilot landing vlog. Go back and look at that. At the end of the story, I kept silent. I looked at the pilot board members and held my ground. Sometimes silence is best. One of the pilot board members wanted to know what happened afterwards. I paused. I wanted the job. I wanted the job really bad, but I didn't want to come across as an eye doctor. Do you know what an eye doctor is? You probably met one of those guys that has a PhD in eye who say, I did this, I did that, I was it, I am the best, I am the greatest, etc. It's always better if you have somebody else brag about you. So I pulled out a letter written by Robert Milton, the CEO of Midnight Express, and handed the letter to the pilot board members. That was the letter of commendation I got for a job well done handling that pilot emergency. "Impressive," said one of the board members. After that, phase 3, I was put into a Boeing 747 simulator for a 30-minute flight check ride. The simulator ride included a takeoff, some vertical S's, a non-standard entry holding, followed by an ILS approach and landing. I had never flown in a jet before. In fact, I have never been in a cockpit of a jet before. So I asked the simulator pilot evaluator for a few pitch and power thrust settings. And then I piloted the 747 aircraft just like any other aircraft. ATC, attitude, trim, cross-check, and adjust the pitch of power accordingly. The next part was to complete the Minnesota multifaceted personal inventory test. It's a personality psychological profile. And the final part was a very thorough medical the next day. Then I was on my way back wondering, how did I do? Did I wear the right tie? In fact, I still had the tie that I wore at that interview. That was the question when you went to an interview. The guy said, "What color tie did you wear?" On June 6th, 1987, Friday evening, Gary Stearns phone called me and offered me an airline pilot job on the Boeing 747 at Flying Tigers. Imagine that. So, on April 10th, 1981, I took my first flight and was hooked on flying. And on July 7th, 1987, I reached my final goal to become an airline pilot, just over 6 years. There are various ways to becoming an airline pilot, but that's how I did it. I did it my way. And maybe this will help you and motivate you to get that airline pilot job or that perfect career job. Thank you for the likes and for subscribing. More pilot vlogs are on the way. Enjoy the day, if not the night.